Good morning. Welcome back. It is 7:17. You're watching BT Vancouver. Well, Canadians may get a preview of next week's throne speech later today as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wraps up a two-day cabinet retreat. And joining us now with a look ahead is Xiaoli Li. Good morning, Xiao.
Good morning, Mary.
So what happened over the last 2 days?
Well, it was a real chance for the cabinet to get together, sit down and hash out what the plan is going forward for Canada. As we all know, the PM called for a prorogue last month, and they're coming back next week, as he mentioned, with a throne speech. And they're really expected to map out what the plan is going forward for Canada coming out of COVID-19. There's no end to the list of problems the Liberals are going to need to address. COVID rates are rising, and the prospect of a return to lockdown if things get any worse. So plans for a post-pandemic economic recovery could be curtailed there. The CERB also ends next week, just 3 days after the throne speech. Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives published an economic note saying that around 4 million Canadians are going to be worse off if there's nothing in the throne speech to account for what's going to happen for that. And if COVID cases continue to rise, yeah, we could see businesses closing again, at least temporarily, and we could see households and individuals in need of CERB-like relief again. Against all this backdrop, the Trudeau government still holds a minority, so they're going to need the support of another party to survive a confidence vote. It's looking like the NDP. Jagmeet Singh says he's skeptical about it, and he hasn't talked to the Liberals yet, but that's set up for later this week. And of course, this afternoon, the PM will be giving a news conference at 1:30 Ottawa time, giving us a clue maybe as to what they've come up with over these past 2 days.
All right, we'll be watching closely for that. And a pleasant surprise for the PM yesterday after the U.S. backed down from its 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum.
Yeah, cabinet ministries yesterday, they took it as nothing less than a total victory. As we know by now, Chrystia Freeland and Trade Minister Mary Ng, they were expecting to go up there and tell us what American goods were going to get hit with import taxes. Instead, they got a chance to do a bit of a victory lap, emphasizing that this was a unilateral move by the U.S., that this means Canada didn't really negotiate this through. The U.S. just looked at the prospect of Canada putting import taxes on American goods and said, you know what, let's forget the whole thing. But if you take a look at it a little closer, the Americans actually kind of got what they wanted. From the word go, all they wanted was this limit on the amount of Canadian aluminum going into the U.S., and their trade note yesterday sets a specific limit for the amount of aluminum we can sell to the Americans. And they say if we go over that limit, they're going to go back to tariffs. But Freeland and some aluminum industry leaders that I talked to yesterday said, well, we're not scared. If you want to go down that route, we'll be ready with reciprocal tariffs again.
All right, Xiao, before we let you go, I wanted to talk to you about COVID-19 numbers in Canada. We're seeing some alarming trends now. And I know I asked you this last week, but are we in the second wave? Can we call it that yet?
Well, I mean, that's the question everyone's been asking. But every time I talk to an epidemiologist, they always say, you know, this isn't a crystal ball thing. We will only really know once we have the numbers in and we can take a better look at it. For now, it's really not clear. You would expect during a second wave a sharp, steep uptick in numbers, the curve looking more like a cliff. But we haven't really seen that yet. And what this means, though, for Ottawa is there's basically no chance of a completely in-person return to normal parliament. That's not even accounting for the fact that the Bloc Québécois is now in isolation. On Monday, a member of the party leader's staff tested positive. So now all 32 of those MPs are in self-isolation and waiting on test results. And Yves-François Blanchette's partner actually has tested positive herself. So we're wishing them all the best, of course.
Of course. Okay, Xiao, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Always great to see you, and we'll see you next week at the same time.
See you then.
All right, 7:21.